Hey, 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 it is just a little bit after 5:30. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am your host, Dr. Lisa, and thank you for joining Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa. Hey, it's been a while. I'm so glad to be back. Happy to do this podcast. Very, very grateful for questions, concerns, and comments. I was just fine. I needed a break, and I took that break, and now I am back. Let's see. Oh, so some of you have been actively contacting me, which is great. Keep those questions coming. It doesn't matter how you give them to me. You can do it via my phone, which is 765-205-1959. You can do it via email at kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. And you can also send me a message on social media, which some of you have done, and I appreciate it. And because I appreciate it, that brought me to Blog 48 titled In Vivo Experiences. That's actually what I was thinking about when I actually wrote this blog back in January about how grateful I am to have met so many of you who are telling me your own experiences and stories about either meeting a child who could see ghosts or being a nebulous child yourself or one who can see ghosts. And I'm also grateful to those parents who have contacted me to ask me, what do I do, even up until yesterday? And also, what I really appreciate is when people meet me and they just start telling me, hey, this is something that's plagued, my children or my family, and I know this stuff is real. Administrators, these kids are telling me they see dark spirits or dark shadows or demons. So I am just extremely happy that I decided to take a leap of faith and get this blog done and get this podcast going because it has brought so much comfort and peace to a lot of people who actually have these live experiences or in vivo experiences with seeing ghosts. So during this time in January, I have to tell you all, I met quite a few people, children and adults who could see ghosts, and other adults who were witnesses to children that weren't even theirs who talked about the ability to see ghosts. And it felt like January was a big month for me because there were so many, especially children, telling me, hey, I know I'm not crazy. I don't want people to think that I'm crazy, but man, I see dark spirits. And it just kept happening over and over again. And I'll have to tell you, it continued to happen up until yesterday. So even though I haven't been on the podcast, I have still been blogging because there's a lot more to blog. So, when you get a chance, I think I'm on like 64 maybe for the blog. So read up on it because I'm still writing those stories because there's still individuals who do talk to me about their experiences. So in January, I was very grateful because some of the people that approached me were feeling better because they were able to release, their experiences to someone about their ability to see ghosts. And then I was even more grateful because they chose me and allowed me to enter their lives and to help them and to talk them through it and gain some insight into their ability to see ghosts. Now, here's a disclaimer. None of these individuals are my clients or were my clients. Remember, I'm not doing therapy anymore. So basically, the stories that I'm writing about now are typically from random people who've been contacting me or people that I've met, had conversations with, or let's just say I'm at the nail salon and people just start shooting the breeze about this kind of stuff, not knowing what I do. And then when I tell them, then they're like, oh man, I got to read it. I could write about it. So many people have said they will write their experiences on my blog. So I hope that they do that just to show you all that, there are still people actively talking about this stuff, which is good. Don't stop talking about it. Excuse me. So, when I finally disclosed that I have a podcast where I talk about my experiences in psychology over the past 20 plus years and with children who can see ghosts and also parents who can see ghosts, and the combination of, that dynamic, the impact of it in their daily lives, such as at school, there are people really excited about it. So this was a time in January when I was really charged up and kind of hyper about all this. So I had to write it out because they're new experiences. So these aren't people that I've even seen anymore, if you will. So when I encounter someone like that nowadays, I'm asking them if I could write it on my blog when it does happen, and I'm writing it immediately so I won't forget. And so this blog is an example of that. So one day I was actually talking to a couple of people who could see ghosts at once. It was interesting because I had never been with a group of kids who would talk about seeing ghosts and they felt comfortable. Now, I'll tell you how the subject came up because I don't think that I wrote about it. But the subject only came up because one of the kids started telling me a little bit about me or what was around me. And I said, crap, you can see ghosts. And this kid said, well, yeah, I've been seeing them all my life. And then another kid said, yeah, well, we have, dark demonic spirits, in certain parts of our house that I see, which is why I don't go in that area. And then another one is like, oh, yeah, I've seen ghosts. There's a little girl down the hallway. I mean, just kind of shooting the breeze with them. So it was like, oh, wait a minute. Number one, I don't judge you. I don't judge you. This is an ability that you can do. So let's just talk about it. And I mean, I had a lot of fun when I wrote this blog, listening to, what people had to say. Those kids that day, it was pretty interesting. So this blog is going to tap into a couple of the things that I learned from a group of kids. Now, I want you guys to always remember that when I talk about my stories, that typically they are from the perspective of children. In this case, this was written from the perspective of teenagers. So some of you have asked about teenagers, so I have to tell you from about blog 48 all the way to 64. So almost about 16 blogs are typically written by me because a teenager talked to me. So that's the same with blog 48. So one of the kids had talked to me about being aware of a female child that was close in the building where we were. And I'll tell you something interesting about this. I've heard about this child ghost that's a little girl that turns in circles a couple of times from different kids. So not just this group of kids, but a couple of times by other kids. And let me just fast forward to a couple of weeks ago. Now, mind you, this was in January. A couple of weeks ago. So back in May, another kid talked about this little girl or female ghost that twirled in circles. Now, I had another adult, probably about 3 weeks after that, talk to me about a female ghost. And I just kind of looked at this adult and I said, wow, really? Because I've had a couple of kids tell me about this female ghost that twirls in circles. And this person gave me a breakdown of the location and all that stuff. So, from my perspective, can you understand why this is so real for me and that I believe these kids? This was an adult who had no clue about what these kids in the group had told me. And it feels like it's just divine intervention because there's always a witness, right? And this witness was this adult who had experienced this, but possibly in a different location. And in my mind, I'm like, is this the same little female spirit? The key word for me was, or the key phrase was, quote, she twirls in circles. And I thought, wow. I mean, they all of them just don't turn in circles, right? So, I was thinking this has to be the same, the same person or the same little spirit. Yeah. So I heard this story about this little child ghost over and over again, and it was again January of this year. And that group of kids shared with me that they wanted to talk more about that child ghost. We did not get the chance to. What I'm hoping is that they will, and I encourage them to, and to ask their parents, they can write out their anonymous stories on the blog or the website. And I think a couple of them listen to the podcast now. So, guys, you can write it. So, I'll tell you more about that little twirling girl ghost as soon as I know more. Oh, one more thing about this. I call her the twirl girl. Um, I did learn that when she, I don't know how to describe it. When she does twirl, like it looks, she's a little girl twirling around like she's chasing a butterfly or something, but that she does move from place to place. And I have a lot of curiosity about that. So TBA on that one. And then we talked about photographic ghosts because one of the things that I brought up was people have asked me about capturing ghosts on camera. That is not something that I do. I don't have a lot of knowledge or advice about that topic at all. And I can't tell you how to capture a ghost on camera. And I'm actually not interested in seeing any ghosts myself, but I always provide an ear when you want to share your stories. So someone had shared with me that she had captured, quote, dozens of ghosts on camera. And I have not heard from her yet. And I'm hoping that if she's listening to the blog, she will respond to me because I told her I will post some of her photos on the blog. So, you know what? I'm going to ask her again today because she claims not only can she see ghosts, but she knows how to capture them. And some ask if she, one of the things that I asked her, I said, what do you know about orbs? Because can you capture an orb on camera? And she said, because see, children didn't talk to me about orbs. I've never had anyone who could see ghosts talk to me about orbs. They only talk about the light of God or they talk about dark angels, but they haven't talked about orbs. So I think orbs are something that's supposed to show before a ghost shows up. Now, I've had parents who could see ghosts to tell me that's nonsense. They say a ghost will just appear. They don't have to shoot a light off or an orb in order to show themselves. It doesn't mean that, they don't know everything either. And so it doesn't mean that, those aren't, I'm not sure the light of God or not, but um, the kids, primarily the adults that I've worked with who can see ghosts, just make sure that they're not dealing with anything dark. Just don't deal with anything dark. Let's see. I think I talked down here about mystical ghosts, which is interesting to me because one of the kids actually told me that sometimes ghosts appear to this child as a mist, like a white mist, and then this child can see the outline of the ghost. And I thought that was really interesting because I had never heard of that. So she or he told me that when she or he sees ghosts, that they're translucent or they come as a light, like if a magician threw some sparkly magic, kind of like that, and then it's all white and it has a blurred face. Or he or she told me that it could be completely solid as we are in life. And so I was thinking about that because I said to myself, if they can actually come in different forms, then I can understand how it would scare a child. For example, if it showed up in this white mist, I think about fog, how in movies sometimes ghosts appear, in fog or in darkness. And to me, that would be scary. So I'll give you a personal example. Last year, I think it was last year. I just can't remember if it was spring or fall or summer. But I believe it was late summer. I had a dream, and there were some angels in the dream, and the angels were in a circle. And I just remember this white mist, like this kid talked about. And with that white mist, there was a spirit there, but I didn't know what it meant. So it was white, and it was a misty white, and it had lights, excuse me, and it had lights, and there were angels in a circle. And the next day, I kind of woke up, like sometimes I remember my dreams, and I kind of woke up thinking, what was that dream all about? And so when that later on that day, I found out that my childhood friend had died. And I thought about it, and I said, well, wait a minute. I think she was telling me goodbye. You hear stories like that. So this just wasn't a childhood friend. We did everything together. Everything. She's she's probably the only friend that ever met my grandfather before he passed away many years ago. So, as you go to college and you graduate from high school, you kind of separate. Plus, I attended college out of my home state. But you never lose that type of love for someone. And so periodically we would still check on each other throughout, 29, 30 years after high school. So to me, because we were so close as children, there was no way she was going to leave this earth without saying, hey, I just want to tell you goodbye. And I think that's what she did. And so when this kid talked to me about mystical ghosts, I'm not saying my friend who passed away was a mystical ghost, but what was around her reminded me of that. And I told this kid about the story, and I said, okay, I can tell you that I kind of understand what you're talking about. And so that is mystical ghosts. Positive and negative energy or energetic ghosts. I had never heard of anything about energy. Um, I mean, years ago I did because I was one of those kids that took different classes, chemistry, physics, stuff like that. Um, but one of the kids told me that ghosts can give off positive and negative energy as well. And so I think little kids call it good or bad, or angels versus dark angels, whereas older kids like these teenagers, they feel energy. So some of the kids were saying that, they can feel a dark spirit's energy. They know when, because they dread it being present. They talk about, you could just feel it's just very negative or dark, or just pulls you in. I can't explain it from their perspective, but it made one of them go, ooh, kind of like that. And so when it's positive, they know that there's no harm going to be done, and they're not going to scare them and things like that. Like so many kids were telling me positive energy, they equate with God and God's angels and things like that, especially if they were kids who prayed. One of them prayed quite a bit, and that kid said, I only want God's angels and positive energy around me. Negative energy just sucks you. And another one I remember said, yeah, because that's why I get depressed sometimes, because it's negative energy. And when they come around, they bring forth this negative energy, and that's the job of a dark angel. And I thought, whoa, these kids are deep. Remember, the conversations were different because they're older. All right. And my conclusion about that conversation is just that I think the kids who can see ghosts in that moment with these teenagers, they've been doing it for so many years that they could actually determine for themselves when it was dark or when it was a positive energy or angel, or, they say they see ghosts that aren't even considered demonic or dark, which is a whole nother blog. And then I had a guy tell me, and after that experience with this conversation with the kids, that he can sense bad energy around him. So he told me that he has all kinds of salt lamps in his house, and people are wearing these bracelets that remove negative energy. And those things are new for me. Somebody bought me a salt lamp, and I was really grateful because I think it looks so cool, but I actually didn't know the purpose of my salt lamp. And this person who bought it told me it removes bad energy. And so for me, that was a new topic. I was like, what is bad energy? So that's kind of why the kids and I were talking about it. And they were saying, the salt lamp, the prayers, all of that will protect me, and it will protect them from dark angels. So that was probably the deepest part of the conversation that I had with these teenagers. I mean, wow, right? The energetic ghost probably was the deepest part because they were really trying to teach me things that I didn't know. So this is just a summary, this blog of the things that we talked about, but I really like talking to them because they're older and they really helped me gain an understanding of what some of these things are that were new for me. So of course we had to talk about dark ghosts, right? All kids want to talk about dark angels. Every last one of them. There isn't a conversation. I actually talked to these kids probably after this time, probably 2 or 3 more times, and about dark angels exclusively, because they wanted to understand more about black magic and why they shouldn't do it. One of them was actually considering dark magic. So I said, oh boy, we got to talk about this because you guys know Dr. Lisa doesn't like to hear that, especially in the kids. So when we talked about it in relation to negative energy, one of the kids wanted to talk about black magic. And I actually met someone who does magic, but not dark magic. And so I'm learning a little bit more about how to teach kids to stay away from black magic. So TBA on that one as well, because kids are experimental and they will do these things. And I try to make sure that they don't. So these kids wanted to talk about dark magic. And I mean, black magic. I keep saying dark because the paragraph is dark angels, and I'm actually looking at my own blog today. But black magic. See, I did it again. So years ago, I really didn't understand this stuff. I knew what Satan is. I knew the purpose Satan had. I knew about Satan and God, the relationship, you know, and et cetera, et cetera. But I had never really known anything about dark magic. The only thing close is that I had an experience where a kid actually had autism, and the parents were not from America. They were not American citizens, but they were here, I believe, for school and a job. So when we talked about autism, the parents believed that they could go back to their home country, and a priest, voodoo priest, shaman, not a voodoo priest, a shaman, their shaman in their culture would be able to remove the demon that was in their child. So that is about the closest, which of course this contains some black magic, what this person was going to do to this kid, because they told me. I didn't make that up, because they told me. What they said was going to happen to me was dark, right? And I said, okay, remember, you're always a psychologist first. And I said, okay, well, just let me know, if you need any assistance when you guys arrive back. Fast forward, I may have told you all the story. Fast forward a couple of months, and you know what happened? Parents came back, kid is still this way. So then they were more open to, behavior interventions and other treatment for their daughter. But otherwise, I hadn't really spoken to anybody about black magic until recently, and this is what triggered it. So the kids were saying that they felt, ironically, people who practice black magic and then those who see dark angels can also see the light of God, but they stay away from it. So from their perspective, they were kind of confused because they say, Satan and his minions bring dark energy, but there are people who actually get into cult behaviors and possessions and feed into dark angels and black magic. But the kids were confused because they said, but you can see this stuff, so why would you want to do that? And I told them, because we all have free will. Some people make that choice, and you cannot judge them, but you don't have to do that. And I don't want you to do that. So the kids were shaking their heads, and they were saying, if God, if they can see this stuff, and then they shouldn't do it, but then there are people out there, and this is what I said to them, there are people out there who actually want to be able to see this stuff. And they said that pretty much the same thing, just a different way. You don't want to see paranormal stuff. It will scare you because it's around us all the time. And I said, yep, kids have told me that too. And one of the kids, a male, talked about not playing with things that would be dark or demonic because they're scary. So I was asking them if this is off the blog, I was asking them if they wanted to play with Ouija boards and, different rituals and stuff like that, because these kids were really opening up to me about some of the things they were thinking about doing. As a matter of fact, back in May, there's another group of kids who had talked to me very seriously about some of this stuff. So I welcome, these kids talking to me and telling me their experiences and asking me questions, and they're joining in on the podcast now and the blog. So I appreciated all of that from them because it was great learning. So what did it do for me? What I decided to do was I started watching YouTube quite a bit, because then there were some things I wasn't aware of, and I'm not perfect, right? And I needed to be educated about those things, because it seems to me, based upon the conversations, that I couldn't help them. Just listening helps. But when you talk about dark magic or performing rituals or magic, those kind of things, I don't know a lot about them. So the one thing was, I went and I started watching videos and people talking about these things. and teaching these things. I had another kid talk about an out of body experience and seeing dark angels. So I went and, researched that in preparation to write it up for the blog. And I started researching near death experiences, what that looks like. So that's one of the things that it did for me. But you always remember, if you are a therapist and or a psychologist, that you're going to deal with a variety of people and things that you may not believe or partake in within your personal life. But you want to, if you decide that you can work with these people, you have to remove your biases and your thoughts. So I went to somebody with some of this information and they were like, oh, that's just bogus. I don't believe in that nonsense. And I said, yep. And you would be the reason why a kid would walk away upset. It can make you uncomfortable because everything in people and in psychology is not going to be 100% easy. Now, if it's outside of the area of expertise that you specialize in, of course, you want to refer them out. But these are kids. I specialize in kids. I don't have, if they were my clients, I don't have to refer them out unless they had something in regard to mental illness that I just don't treat. For example, I don't and cannot do personality disorders because I'm not trained in them because I've always worked with children. So, but when you work with kids, for example, you're going to hear some things that'll make you feel uncomfortable. I had a child, I'll give you an example, probably 13 years old, not too long ago, talked to me about being pregnant. 13. Gosh. Yeah. I know you guys gasped too, because I did. I was clenching my pearls because I wanted to remain professional and then go, what the heck were you thinking? Right? But I didn't. I had to treat her like a pregnant female. And it killed me because this person was 13. Yep. So you always want to do what? Keep your boundaries clear. And that's what I had to do with this group of kids and also with the 13-year-old child. And then you can talk to them about things that they bring up. So, of course, I wouldn't have brought up ghosts had they not brought it up. And remember, it was a coincidence. Just make sure that if these are things that you cannot work with, for example, you always make the proper referrals to other professionals to make sure that your clients are dealt with properly. Now, one of the things that I did with some of these kids is that I made a significant amount of referrals. A lot of them, because remember, I don't do therapy anymore. So I transfer those kids to people who do therapy because right now it's outside of the area of my expertise, some of the other things that they have going on. So it was just a really interesting moment for me with regard to, a group of children. And I have many more that I've been writing about. For example, Blog 49 is dark magic. I told you I had been researching. So I dedicated an entire Blog 49, to dark magic because I had learned so much about it. And I'm still not done learning, but I did want to share with you. And then another time was Blog 50. So Blog 50 is big. It was also 2 days after my 50th birthday. I'm introducing another child to you in Blog 50. So make sure you go to the blog, read it, share them, like them. I appreciate it. But talking about these things makes me happy. So next week we'll do Blog 49 Dark Magic, and then we will be to Blog 50. So I really appreciate you all joining me today. Anytime you want to chime in on Podbean, make sure you do so. You all have a wonderful up and coming weekend, and I will see you next week.